Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie, and welcome back to the World Cup DraftKings DFS Slate Breakdown. We've got another super busy day of action here with another 6 games with three more groups closing out. So, really fun looking slate. Lots of teams to pick from. Some of those being Germany against Ecuador. Germany minus 200 there. Curacao against Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast are huge favorites in that one, minus 650. And then Netherlands, huger favorites against Tunisia, minus 1,000. So that is the best matchup of the slate in terms of odds and who to stack. Then you get Japan against Sweden, though, minus odds in that one. And then Turkey, USA. USA minus odds, which I think is a little, I don't love that because I don't really agree with it, just because the USA, they're going to have a really rotated team against a Turkey who are just playing for pride, of course, with USA already clinching top, Turkey already eliminated. But still, the Turkey are not going to rotate. They're going to put their best lineup to kind of walk away with some pride. So I don't know if the US should really be minus odds, since Turkey's team's going to be just vastly more talented, more likely than not, come the starting lineups. Then Australia against Paraguay, basically a coin flip of a game. Paraguay are slight favorites, but still, it's basically whoever wins goes to the World Cup essentially in that one. Although I think the third place will be interesting, but you want to get second for sure. For goal scorer odds, or I guess these are goal or assist we're on this time. For Germany and Ecuador, the leader there is Denise Undav at plus 100. For Curacao and Ivory Coast, we've got Boni, Gasson, Diallo, Omar Diakite if he plays. I don't think he's played a minute yet, but he's a minus odds as well. All those guys are. Pepe minus 135, Wahi minus 135, Adingra. Basically, all the attackers, you just have to remember. Like all of the front line have minus odds for goal contribution. Simple as that. For the Netherlands, huge numbers here. Gakpo, my nemesis after nuking in that Ecuador slate when there's no need to pay 10K for him, but just people just played him because pricing was off. God, annoyed me so much. He's like 40% owned. I was just like, that's just ridiculous. But then he got 40 points. Like, okay. That's why people played him, I guess. Now, I think it is a lot better time to play him now. He's got a much better matchup playing Tunisia. Huge odds there for him. Depay, too, who might get a start. His Broby is dealing with a knock. We'll have to see what lineups come out with. I think Mullins has like the same issue, so who knows? We have to see starting lineups for this one to kind of really get a bigger picture. And set pieces change a lot as well. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Basically, all the Netherlands guys smash spots, shocking to no one. For Japan and Sweden, leading odds there are Ayase Ueda at plus 120, followed by Junya Ito. Guy, I like that Ecuador day. Once again, he did okay himself, but it wasn't a 40-point haul of Gakpo. But he's plus 130 for a goal contribution. For the USA, Pulisic, supposedly good to go. We'll see if they go with him from the start or maybe sub him on. But he's plus 110 for a goal or an assist. Balogun, I don't think he'll play because of that yellow card. Pepe maybe plays Haji Wright, maybe plays. We'll have to see. Like this USA lineup, we kind of have no clue what to expect there other than some rotation. For the table, which I think we'll talk about it as we go through the projected lineups, or if we can just do it now. The teams that really need this game. First of all, USA, they don't need it all. They're first no matter what. Turkey, already eliminated, they don't need it at all. So that game is just purely for pride. For Australia and Paraguay, of course, they're playing each other. If probably a point gets both of them through, I'm sure Paraguay would want to win to finish second because the goal difference is what separates them right now. And whoever wins, like the head-to-head first tiebreaker doesn't really matter since the points will be different if someone wins this game anyways. So it's basically just a straight shootout between those two for a second spot, which makes it pretty simple in that group. For Germany's group, Germany have, of course, clinched first no matter what. They've beaten both Ivory Coast, or no, yeah, they've beaten both Ivory Coast and Curacao. So even if Ecuador wins and Ivory Coast wins, they'll be ahead of Ivory Coast on head to head, and they'll be ahead on everyone else's in points. So Germany, you're gonna see a ton of rotation from them, like we said earlier. So it's a whole like new lineup I would be surprised by. So they're an interesting team. Like I'm not really sure what to do with them. Ecuador have a lot more to play for. It's a must win for them. So like, it could very much end up like this Mexico and Czech Republic game where they might just have too much for Ecuador anyways, even though all the stakes are on the Ecuador side. So it's just a hard to deal with game for sure. And then for Ivory Coast and Curacao, that's the kind of match that we like here, where It's very similar to the Bosnia-Qatar game, where you've got both teams who have a chance to go through, but one team's just vastly superior. So I like Ivory Coast quite a bit here. And then in Group F, we've got Netherlands, Japan, Sweden, Tunisia. This is probably the closest group. I think Tunisia are eliminated just because they've lost to Sweden, so they can't go ahead even if they win their game against Netherlands, which they're just not going to do due to the head-to-head differential. So they're dead, which makes Netherlands beat down spot even more likely, just because the Tunisia team is playing purely for pride, and they clearly have not shown that they have a ton of that. They beat them a ton of goals every game. They really they're such a smash Netherlands spot, very similar to what we got from Morocco actually, where it ended up being kind of a bit of a surprise how well Morocco played. I don't really see that from Tunisia. Like I think Netherlands could really hammer like 4 or 5 past them, and I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. And then Japan Sweden, that's a lot more interesting. Once again, kind of a shootout game where whoever plays well or whoever wins gets second place, potentially first even if results go their way and somehow Netherlands drops points. So there is some incentive for the Netherlands, I guess, but still, yeah, that this group is really just a dead heat. Kind of, although like it really just should be how many goals Netherlands score and who finishes second, since you don't really see Netherlands losing. 4% match and likely set pieces for Curacao at first. They're kind of messy. And this team, my guess is one of the Bakunas. I think one of them went off injured too. I don't know if he's healthy. I haven't seen an update on those. Let's actually check that right now. Although it doesn't matter a ton. Nobody's playing any of the Bakunas. And they're probably 1% down for good reason. But I think Janino was the one who kind of was hurt a little bit. Maybe he recovered. God, I think he's fine. So ignore me. But like one of the Bakunis usually takes, they're kind of messy. Like I said, a guy who does take quite a bit is what's his name? Guy, like I don't even know why I'm doing this because none of us are going to play really any Curacao players. I'm telling you now. But his name is he takes a lot. Antonese, that is it. So watch out for him if you really want your Curacao set pieces. For Ivory Coast, it should be Diomande and Diallo in this team. One name I will watch out for is Nicola Pepe. If he starts, I've seen some potential projected lineups with them starting of a 4-4-2, having Pepe in there taking out one of the center mids. And when Pepe starts, he usually has the majority of the set pieces, like 75 to 90% even. Like in this team, you expect a Diamande Diallo split. When Pepe's in, it's like a Pepe monopoly pretty much. So watch out for that when we get lineups. Of course, that game is first in the day, although it is a pretty late start. You're going to know before anyone else. So you're going to have plenty of time to adjust your teams off of whoever is starting for that game. And then for Ecuador and Germany, look at this Germany lineup they have projected. Just absolute craziness. Kimmich and Ram should split in this team. I mean, he's a big guy for sets for his club team, but he just kind of relinquishes that for Kimmich for Germany. And for Ecuador, they're pretty messy. It's sometimes Plata, sometimes Yaboa, sometimes Caicedo. They all end up with a little bit of a share. Usually Caicedo on one side and then Plata and Yaboa split the other. Just kind of messy, kind of gross with them. For Japan and Sweden, Japan should be an Ito monopoly in this team. Super fun. I like that a lot. Sweden, who I don't really know what to make of them. They lost by 5 goals and they won by 5 goals, or was it 4-4? But like they got beat down and they had a beat down. So I don't know what to make of this team whatsoever. But their set pieces are Ayari and Benjamin Nigrin. For Tunisia and the Netherlands, Tunisia, I think it was Saad who had most of their set pieces. That's the first thing Hervenard did was just change their set pieces for no reason. So that's that if you want to target him. I think maybe also had a really good game, like 8 fouls drawn or something. It's just crazy. For the Netherlands sets, though, it should be Reinders in this team. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Broby not play with his injury. Seems that Van de Ven, like he's had a yellow. I wouldn't be surprised if they put an Ake or something at left back, put in Depay up top, and that would change their sets drastically. Maybe even we see a Coop Mainers too, which would also change their sets as well. When Depay starts, he does have a share. It's whether he splits with like a Coop Mainers or has everything. And that just kind of depends solely on if Coop Mainers and Depay play together. So either way, there's the two names to watch out for. And otherwise, if it is something similar to this, you get Reinders sets, which we don't want because he's just been awful through 2 games with the Monopoly, which is just so bad for the amount of good games that they've had to the Netherlands. Like, they played really well, at least last game. And just he did nothing. He had like 3 points. It's just awful. For Paraguay, their set pieces are probably some combo of Mauricio, Gomez, and Cecil, maybe Galarza too. We got that super early red card from Miguel Almiron covering his mouth while talking. It's just like what a bonehead thing to do, man. Like, what are you saying? It's so bad you have to cover your mouth. Like, I completely understand why they have that red card rule. And like they were all told it before, and he's still just completely not even thinking whatsoever. It doesn't even matter what he said. That's just that dumb. But like that changes their sets. Almiron usually takes when he plays. Otherwise, I don't know. Like they had no corners, I don't think. So who knows what they do with that combo of guys. For Australia, it should be Connor Metcalf mostly in this team. Maybe Okan Engster, I think, had a corner too as well, but I think he is a lefty. I think Metcalf does have priority, and I think O'Neal splits with him. So that's their sets. For Turkey and USA, once again, who knows who's going to start here? And this USA team is probably going to be Berhalter and Zendejas, I guess. But Gio Reyna can have set pieces too sometimes. Arvston's had some sets as well for the lesser USA teams. So they're super messy situation with that. Then they actually have Turkey rotating a decent amount. This team, it should be a Gula Çalhanoğlu split. It pretty much always is. Those guys are both on. And that's that kind of a really weird slate. It's not as competitive as the one that we had today, or when you're watching this Tuesday, where you have every game kind of meaning a ton. Now you've got this like entire games that are pretty soft-sided, and we have some competitive ones, but a lot of teams just are already through, already out, unfortunately, which has just killed the slate a tiny bit. However, saying all that, we soldier on. There's some really interesting pricing decisions here, starting with Cody Gakpo at 9,900. He's going to be extremely popular. Like, look at that. Look at that huge log, 40.8 points against Sweden. And I plays a much worse team. People are going to be all over this. They don't care. He doesn't have sets when he gets 7 shots a game or whatever he does. He had 5-4 on target, which is crazy. Asking, it's a bunch of open play crosses. So it's hard to argue with this Gakpo spot. He's going to be super popular for good reason. I'll be having a ton of shares of him as well. Who looks like I wouldn't touch if he started. Kai Havertz is just not going to start. Depay is a super interesting one. If you go Depay and Gakpo together, that takes up a ton of salary. They're super fun plays, super interesting plays, and I'd plan to have them both in. I'm saying it now. I'm going to have a lot of builds that start that, and if I have to adjust after lineups come out, so be it. But I'm planning to do a lot of builds that start 9K Depay, 9K Gakpo up top together, and 5K remaining per slot, and just really work around that as much as I can. If I was to prioritize one of them, it would be Gakpo. He's just the better player. He's more important to the team. Depay is kind of just on the way out. Probably gonna get subbed for I don't know whoever else they have. Wout Weghorst or something probably comes on for him, even if he does start. So while I love the Depay set pieces, you kind of got to draw the line somewhere where you say you'd rather have the guy who's just the better in real life player. And I think this is that time. But still, but I love both of them. I'll have combinations with both of them. I'll have one or the other in a lot of builds. But I want to be a little bit more spread in terms of my salary. But still, like both just great plays. Balogun probably not going to play. Mullen, we'll see if he starts. What do they say about him? Oh, just his stats from last game. He's played pretty bad, it must be said. Like he's not having a good first couple games for the World Cup after having a really, really good season for Roma in the Serie A. So I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't really fit this team. Like similarly, like a Dembele like at France, where they just don't really get the best out of him. That might just be the case with Malen, or he's just playing through injury. I don't remember if it was him or someone really know how to knock. I believe Malen has one too. We'll see who starts. Either way, they're both interesting. Like these Netherlands guys are all going to be in play pieces. I'm going to say exactly what I said about Morocco in yesterday's video, where like I'm not even shares of all these guys. Like this matchup is so good, they're gonna have lots of points from all over from them, and I want to have shares of that no matter where they come from. Other forwards, Gyökeres, maybe in GPPA, but otherwise, I don't love it. He had a really good game actually against the Netherlands. He had 12 forward, which is just crazy. If this game ends up as a shootout, I could see that happening. Gyökeres can get there that way. Maybe have a little mini Japan, Sweden just game stack and have both guys, a lot of guys from both teams, just to hope that game ends up high scoring. But otherwise, I'm better off going to Netherlands pieces, better off going to Ivory Coast pieces who are a little bit further down, as we will see here. However, other guys worth mentioning, and Ciso's played really well the first couple games. A couple of assists to his name. He's got a good floor. I'll be having shares of him too. Although I know he's 8K, which is a little bit pricey, but I didn't really rate this Australia team too much. Like they got their really good draw against Turkey by throwing, or good win against Turkey, excuse me, by throwing 11 men behind the ball and counterattacking. And I don't know if that'll work against Paraguay, who probably want to play the same way. Both teams are kind of like that. So if both teams kind of sit back, it'll probably come down to quality. And I think this Paraguay team has a little bit more quality than this Australia team. We'll have to see them. So give me some shares of Enciso at 8K. Guys further down, I consider Ito. I love as a player. I like him as well at only 7,500. So Monopoly set piece taker likely. It's hard to argue against that. Then we got the first Ivory Coast guy, Yan Diomande at 7K. He's another guy who's just been awesome. Didn't do a ton against Germany, but he's just so active. He gets a ton of dribbles. He's going to draw a lot of fouls in his Curacao team. He seems to have some finishing product to his game, which he definitely can do. Like he had a really good season for Leipzig and Bundesliga. He's like their best guy. So give me him with his Curacao matchup, even if he doesn't end up with any sets or anything. 7K for a super attacking winger. I think that's a very worth use of that 7K there. Further down, Broby. We'll see if he does end up playing. Like I said, I assume, yeah, fit for Thursday's match, but I imagine that they're not going to risk that. I like that's probably Ronald Koeman coach speak. Yeah, everyone's good, but then it comes game time, you just don't really see him near the squad. So I don't think they'll risk him. I expect the Pie to start up top, especially considering that they're probably going to top the group very easily. Like I just don't really see them not. Like they should be able to beat Tunisia with like a second string team, really. Maybe Rui comes on if it's tight. That's the only thing I'd see, and if he's really that healthy. But otherwise, like I just don't really see them risking him this early on in the tournament. Guys further down that I consider, I don't love Nigrin or Valencia in these spots for different reasons. Energy's is a tough matchup. Nigrin is because he plays pretty defensive. He doesn't really have a ton of upside to him. He's just really just played poor, just generally throughout this tournament. Amad Diallo, if it's that projected lineup that we just saw, awesome play. We just have to worry. We have to think about whether Pepe plays or not. So if Pepe plays, Diallo's just okay. He's just kind of a piece of Ivory Coast attacking exposure. If Pepe doesn't play, splitting set piece taking attacker, then we love that. So those set pieces make all the difference with him. I feel like at 6,700, he might be worth throwing in a couple of builds, even if he ends up setless. So, and then he's sort of like a lock pretty much if he does have sets. Guys further down, I'd consider Voltamata at 6K. Whatever. Plata, I don't know. I like him as a player, but just tough matchup. I'm looking for a couple of guys. Nicola Pepe was the first guy I was looking for. 66K, 6K flat. Had a pretty awful game against Ecuador. Only played 5 minutes against Germany. I think people are not going to really be on this if he does start, just because he played poor in his only matchup. But now he's got a much better game against Curacao. Like I said, she had the Lions' share of set pieces. So 6K for potential Monopoly set piece taker on minus 650 favorite. Like I just don't really see how you can see any downside against that. Maybe if you want to nitpick about one of his issues, it could be that his minutes can be a little bit inconsistent. He probably gets subbed early if he does start. But even if he gets 75 minutes of 10 corner Ivory Coast Pepe, like give me that. He might end up on 15 crosses from those numbers. Further down, Miguel Almiron, not going to play, of course. Gasol, we'll see if he starts. Same with who's the other striker, Wahi, who I don't think he can play this game, but maybe him or Boney. Whoever starts it up top for Ivory Coast is going to be relatively cheap. I believe it is Boney in projected. Let's just make sure real quick. Yeah, I love him. Like he's so cheap, but he allows you to get up to a Depay, a Gakpo really easily. So he probably makes even more sense here than a Pepe, than a Diallo, than a Diamande, just because he's so much cheaper with probably very similar goal scoring odds. I'm trying to remember exactly what he was at, but it was really good. I know. I think they're all like minus 150-ish, weren't they? So, no, it's like really crashed, whatever. We don't need it. I know he was at like minus 150. So, I definitely will be having an absolute ton of that, despite the low floor. Definitely a high ceiling kind of game for him. True punt forwards, I consider Pita at 4K, sure, just because I do back Paraguay in this Australia matchup, and I could definitely see him scoring a goal, even though he's just like a big body. He doesn't really look like that easy on the eye. But if he just bangs a header in off of a corner or something, that's all you really need with him. Even if he doesn't seem like the most technically gifted player on that team. For midfielders, I wouldn't touch Verts. Arda Güler, I'm kind of tempted by. Like I said, I don't really agree with the USA odds. I think Turkey should be favored in this one. And Guler's had a great floor. I know he said perfect flow 2 games in a row, but he's got 20 plus points. So you can't really argue with that whatsoever. I believe in Turkey playing for pride here. I think the USA will sit back a little bit as well, kind of absorbing pressure after seeing it how well it worked for Paraguay and Australia. But this Turkey team just doesn't have answers. Their only like solution to deep blocks is to keep crossing it in and shooting from distance, which is just great for DFS, but bad for an IRL team. And I'd rather just have the DFS points, even if they lose 3-0 to the US, which I don't really think they will anyway. Other mids down here, I'd consider Reinders if we do not see Depay or Koopmeiners, but he's been so bad. I really hope we see a Depay starting, so I don't even have to be tempted by a Tijani Reinders. Like he's had Monopoly 2 games in a row, and he's had what 8 points in four. That's so poor from him. Other midfielders I'd consider Çalhanoğlu at 7,700. I don't like him as much as Arda Güler, but still he's very active, takes a ton of shots from distance, especially he has those crosses to his game. So don't mind him. Mid further down, I consider Ayari at 6,400. He's played really well the last couple games. Of course, had that monster game against Tunisia where he scored a couple of goals really late on. But then he had a really solid match against the Netherlands too, a quiet, just solid 10, which is just very good DFS playing. Where it's like if your worst score is a 10 points, you're gonna be very good kind of DFS play where like, you can't really kill a lineup with 10 points. Like maybe it's not enough to win a GPP, but like in cash especially, it's not gonna sink you. Like a guy who like is in range, like let's say a goal dependent forward, like let's use Voltamata as an example. Say he starts where Voltamata, like he could very easily drop a 1, 2 point game where he just doesn't touch the ball at all. Except these takers, like they will have opportunities, they will have corners at some point to cross the ball in, and those points really add up, as we saw with the guy. Who do we just talk about? I'm already just losing my mind. Ayari. So yeah, give me set piece takers all day, especially set piece takers who have upside. Koopmeiners worth a mention here. We'll see if he starts. Should split. Should be very intriguing. Only 5,600, 5K range. So yeah, if he starts, if we see a lineup where it's him and no, let's say he starts instead of Reinders in that team, so they still have Roby up top, then you get like a potential monopoly for. It's like this is the right game for. Like say he starts in the spot with Reinders right here, he has a potential monopoly property. Like I don't think they go like a split anymore. It used to be Gakpo splitting set pieces, but I just kind of lost that. So it probably ends up being a Koopmeiners monopoly. So we'd love if we got that kind of lineup. Otherwise, I think it'll be a split. Like I guess if he does play, it will be with Depay rather than without. So that's how their set pieces would look with him. And I just love Koopmeiners only 5,600. That's just a great value play. Further down, Zendaya has GDP, I think is worth a mention. Potential set pieces has played really well for the USA when he suited up last few games. So give me some of him if he starts. Gravenberch is kind of cheap Netherlands exposure. Like, it's hard to argue against that. Arston should be a defender. They've stat corrected or they position corrected a lot of guys like Kai Havertz and Kimmich right here, finally, where they should be. Still not Arston though, so I'll complain again. Fix Arston too, guys, while you're at it. You're almost done to having all these guys in the right positions. Arston's a left back. He's not a midfielder. Please just fix him too. He's as much a defender as Serginho Dest, who's playing right mid every game. So at least have Arston in the right spot too. Connor Metcalf at 4,300 worth of mention. Set piece taking Australian, of course. Had a good game off the bench against the USA. Had a great game with that goal against Turkey in game 1. So we like a Connor Metcalf around here, or it is Connor Metcalf, right? Yeah. Punt midfielders, Galarza, who scored that goal to knock Turkey out. I was mad at myself like crazy for not playing him in Showdown, but still, perfect time to get back on the bandwagon here. Maybe a little bit more of a premium ownership, but I like that with this Australia matchup anyways. So give me some of him. Punts I'd consider Seko Fofana has had a goal in him all this time. Same with Kessie. But I wouldn't be surprised if they rotated out just because he's on a yellow card. They could maybe not even start Fofana either and go with like a Sangare, someone else midfield. Who's a really talented Turkish league midfielder they've got. Let me check that real quick. It's bothering me. I can't remember it. Yeah. And now Ula, he looked really good against Germany. I'll have some shares of him too, just because he's a bit more of a box to box mid. He's pretty creative. He's got fast feet. I'll have shares of him too. I don't think he has set pieces or anything, but like I said, I'm gonna have shares of all these Ivory Coast guys. Same for the Netherlands. Further down, I don't love much way at the bottom here. I think those couple of cheap Ivory Coast mids are kind of your best bet at 4K. Like sub 4K, like 3K ish range guys. I'm just not seeing a ton, honestly. Well, Pato, like if he starts, he has set pieces over Connor Metcalf. So watch out for him, I suppose. He had a really good game too in 30 minutes. That'd be a surprise start that we'd be interested in for sure. But that game is the last one, or I guess you have the Turkey at the same time too. But like you're gonna have a ton of alternative if you have well Pato and he doesn't start. For defenders, Kimmich has been awesome. I don't see myself getting there personally for 8K. Give a guy with a little more upside than him. I don't know if he starts really anyway. Dumfries, I'd play Dumfries over Joshua Kimmich with that Tunisia matchup. He's got great upside. He finally showed that against Sweden, 20 points for him there. Now an even better game. And he continues to bomb up the field. Like it's usually just because whatever left back he plays alongside, like opposite to him, is usually a center back. I believe it's Van de Ven projected. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Ake rotating in. Either way, you're gonna have Dumfries way up here. Whoever's the left back way back there to cover for Dumfries way up there. So we love Dumfries a lot. Basically another attacker for only 7,400. I think he makes a lot of sense here. Further down, Brown around. We'll see who starts both of them. Pretty fun guys. I like them a little bit more than the Kimmich just because they play a little bit more wide. They cross roll and play a little bit more. Kimmich, he's been playing really well, but I don't think his points are sustainable whatsoever. Like he had 10 crosses against the Ivory Coast. They were losing most of the game. I don't really see that happening against Ecuador, although they're both really good defensive teams. I imagine Germany are going to have their gas off of the pedal a little bit more in this one, and he's like 1.5K more than a Rom and then a Brown, like 2K more actually, where I don't think that's really worth it, honestly, for using all that salary on a defender here who doesn't cross that much from open play and also has a lot tougher matchup than a lot of these guys who are going to want to have salary for, aka those Netherlands guys, where you need to have every penny that you can to jam all of them together. Further down defenders I'd consider Estupia, I'm not going back to. Sure, had an awful game. The only one who did really against Curacao last game. Van Dijk into UP, I like. He's really expensive, but I think that'll also keep his ownership down. He always has a goal threat, always has good ability to same thing, but he just has a goal threat. He's really towering and he's really menacing and he scores a lot of goals off set pieces. And of course, he did that match day one, and no one's going to want to play 6K for him. So give me some of him. Maybe he scores one or two. I've seen him score 2 or 3 goal games. I don't think of 3 goal games, but I've seen him have 2 goal games where he just heads it off of a corner a couple of times just because he's that big, he's that powerful. And he works well to pair with a set piece taker like a Depay or a Koopmeiners, where suddenly you can really rack up 20 points in one play, say if he heads in a corner for one of those guys. So I like that. Hila Due makes some sense here. Singo, of course, injured. It should be Due just automatically starting. He's a little bit pricey, 5,300, but still got second best matchup on the slate. It's hard to imagine that I won't have shares of him. Further down, guys, I love Conan, Gila or Gillian Conan. It is hasn't had any crazy games, but he's got pretty good. Well, he just does have a really good Curacao matchup now, where we saw everyone eat last match. So give me some of him for only 4K. I like that as a little bit more of a discount on Due, on Raum, on Brown, and Kimmich. I think he does that role quite well. Then we'll see you search the left back, Van de Ven or Ake. Either way, I'll have much exposure to that just because there was really cheap potential left backs Then even Van Heck I liked a lot too. I would be surprised if I play him over some of the left backs in some builds, just because his minutes are a little bit more secure. Hope for a goal on the set piece, like we always said. But give me some of that, and hopefully get a clean sheet too, because they really should get that against Tunisia. True punt defenders, I think about not a ton here, really. If I had to pick one, it'd be. Sorry, guys, I'm exhausted. I'm recording this super late on, but I knew I had to get this out for you. So apologies for the yawning, but the show must go on. I'm not seeing a ton of punts really. I think you're best off going to Owen or playing like a center back from either of these teams. Let's look at, we talked about Ben Heck already. Let's look at Ivory Coast specifically, the first. Like Kosunu if he starts, Diomande, Agbadu. I'll have some of those guys too, just because it's only 3K for a piece of Ivory Coast exposure, who we've already established. I really love this team. Goalkeepers now, it's interesting they have Fofana more than Verbruggen. They usually do with these goalkeeper prices off of the odds. In this case, those are a lot bigger favorites than Ivory Coast. So sometimes it just means odds have changed since the prices came out. That's what it means most of the time. This slate's been out for a while, remember, too. It's been a couple few days early. It got added a few days earlier than normal. So when the line movement happens, you get a lot of goalkeeper price discrepancies, which should definitely change the way you're built. Like you should end up liking your Bruno a little bit more because of this price difference. Although it's not a ton, that 100 is savings on what he probably should be, since he should be the 6K goalkeeper over Fofana, purely off of the odds. There's a little bit more goalkeeper insight. I've already talked about goalkeeper a lot more than I like to do, just because of how random it is as a position. But let's go into our core here. We'll go off of these projected lines. I'm not gonna go off the projected lines. I don't think Broby's gonna play. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pepe does. But yeah, I don't think Broby's gonna play. I'm gonna have Gakpo. I'm gonna have Depay because I think they both play. And then I'd have Pepe if he plays, but I think he's a little bit more iffy than these other guys. I screwed up. Why did I take that out? I meant to just move Gakpo to a mid slot. Doesn't really matter. Because the other guys can go utility anyway. But whatever. Like you get the idea. Like you're gonna have Gakpo in his mid slot because the other guy's gonna be a forward. It's going to be Boney at 4,800. That's how I start my builds. Plenty of upside. Maybe you're lacking a little bit in the floor, but we just saw Ener Valencia get like 13 points to Curacao, Justin Floor, and Boney. I think I trust him a little more to put one of those away, unlike Enter Valencia. But yeah, guys, for now, that is all I got. Good luck, and I'll see you for the next one.